Today, once again, I am joined by Craig Bryant of Paranormal Pendle Podcast. Hiya, Craig.
Hello, how are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Today, we've spoke before on both our little channels. It's just a really relaxed chat today, now that we know each other better. But I want to thank you for sending me your books in the past.
I'm so glad that you've got them because I've just run out of copies.
Mine's signed, so you can't have this back.
No, I know. It'll be worth a bit in about 200 years, that.
Yeah. Black Monks of Accrington, Shadow Man of Accrington. Just give us a rundown on how this came about, project.
Oh, blimey. Well, we're going back a bit now with both of them. I've actually got an idea for another book, which I'm sort of been mulling around for a while, and I've been doing a bit of research and looking at sort of similar other books because, with anything with the paranormal, 99% of the time when you come up with an idea to write a book, somebody's already beaten you to it. I was quite lucky with those two books that you mentioned there. They're both actually based in the town of Accrington. Accrington's a very old town. It's in East Lancashire. It's sort of in between, for people that don't know, Blackburn and Burnley. It's an old cotton town, as are many of the towns in East Lancashire. The idea really was... the first book, The Shadow Man of Accrington, I started talking to people about their own personal experiences. Started off with family members. There was also some things that had happened to me over the years. At the time, I'd started to really get into the late, great Howard Hughes and his radio show and his podcasts. I just sort of came across his show one Sunday night when he was on talk radio purely by accident, and that sort of rekindled my interest in the paranormal and subsequently into sort of UFO sightings and cryptids and that sort of thing. So to cut a very long story short, I suddenly realised that I had so many stories that either people had told me, personal stories, family stories as well, and I thought, I'm going to put them into a book and I'm going to put my own experiences in there as well. And lo and behold, that was the book. And I then found that I had some stories left over. And I found that people started to contact me who had read the book. And I started my own podcast. Must be about 3-4 years ago now. I'm not particularly prolific. I do a couple a month. I think that's enough really for anybody to put up with me. But that coincided with the writing of the second book. I had some really, really good people contact me and tell me about their own stories. And again, this was sort of people from and around the area that I grew up in. And that's why both books are sort of centred on Accrington, because not only, have I had quite a few experiences over the years and family members have had experiences over the years, but quite a lot of other people that I've got to know through doing this. Who live in the area have had a lot of experiences as well. So it's an area that's got a lot of paranormal activity, certainly in the town centre. And then in the second book, I also sort of moved a little bit wider out as well. So there's some stories about the Ribble Valley where I'm living now. Again, just talking to local people and chatting with people who've lived around this area, which is a lot more rural. It's more countryside than town. But again, they had some really interesting stories, some really great local stories, local legends, and they just ended up in the second book. So that's how the two books sort of came about, and they're just sort of me recounting my own experiences, those of family members, and those of people that I've met and spoken to over the years.
Yeah, it does seem that you started off with people in your immediate family and then sort of... you seem to get loads of stories though. I know you've had a lot of experiences and it's good to have them in writing, so that...
Well, my mother-in-law lived in a farmhouse in a place called Rising Bridge, which is near Haslingden. So again, if you don't know where it is, get the map out, have a look. It's not that far from Accrington. It's on the way to Manchester. But they lived in a 16th century farmhouse, and they had a poltergeist, or they had a ghost. There was definitely some poltergeist activity there. My sister-in-law talked about things that had happened to her. My wife, who lived there obviously for a while because they grew up there, she told me about things that had happened. My wife's now departed grandfather had an experience, several experiences actually. So he told me about the things that had gone on there. So just your sort of classic poltergeist activity, really. Levitating glasses. a levitating whiskey glass, slamming doors, heavy footsteps. Some quite interesting interaction where this particular entity used to bang on the bedroom door of my sister-in-law every night, and she got to the stage where she used to shout at it and swear at it and tell it to go away in typical Lancastrian fashion, and it did. So I found that quite interesting that it was reacting to what she was telling it to do. But it did seem to focus its activities on her. She was the middle child of three, so and the younger of the two sisters. So that was quite interesting. Electrical problems that always used to happen when they had people coming round, all sorts of stuff. So yeah, it was interesting place.
So poltergeist activity is pretty high on the scale of things to witness, isn't it? And I know that when you worked in a bar or whatever, your little story was the tankard, the handled tankard lifting off seemingly and smashing. Not that you saw that, but upon hearing the smashing glass,
it happened. Yeah, it was behind me, and I turned around and went to have a look. And to me, there was no way that it could have just fallen off the hooks, because the hooks were up underneath up underneath the bar, and there were the big tankards, and you physically had to lift it up and off in order for it to be able to then fall to the ground. So yeah, there was definitely some quite interesting poltergeist activity there as well.
Have you got any theories on what poltergeists are?
Yeah, probably they're obviously some sort of energy, but they've obviously got a consciousness, because they tend to react to the surroundings or react to people. They're not like a recording. They're not what some people, obviously, I'm sure you listeners and viewers have heard the stone tape theory. I had Richard Felix on my podcast not so long ago, actually. We were chatting about stone tape theory. He's quite into it. But no, poltergeists. I wonder what I've been wondering what a ghost is, basically, and especially a poltergeist, and whether it is something which is residual energy which is left behind when somebody dies, or whether it's a portal into another dimension or another plane of existence, and something is coming through or partly coming through, and that's why you can't always see it, or you can't see it clearly like you could see a person walking into a room, but there's enough of that consciousness or energy coming through, and especially to be able to move things. Now, whether that's by telekinesis or whether it's physically moving something, but you can't see what it is that's moving that object, I don't know. The more that I speak to people in the paranormal world, the more I am inclined to believe that a ghost isn't actually a residual energy of somebody that's died. I think it's more an entity in itself that, because we don't understand what it is, has always been labelled as a ghost, somebody who's dead coming back to speak to somebody, or coming back to, in inverted commas, haunt somebody. But at the end of the day, I'm no parapsychologist. I'm no expert. Good guy to talk to about this actually is Dr. Kieran O'Keefe, and again, very lucky to have him on my podcast a couple of months back. And he is your ultimate scientific skeptic, and he's got some really good theories about things. But equally, I spoke to him. I said, I asked him, have things happened to you that you can't explain? And he said, of course, lots of things happen that I can't explain. 99 times out of 100, he could probably explain something away, but it's that one time that I think is more perplexing. So what's a poltergeist? Well, it's obviously some sort of entity that has got a consciousness and has got the ability to move things, physical things. But beyond that, I've got absolutely no idea. It could be a myriad of different things.
You see, I've had bangs in reaction to me asking for bangs. 2 occasions. Now, we're talking 2 occasions out of 15 years worth of asking.
Yeah.
Right? So, generally speaking, I don't get it. But 2 occasions when we're alone in a building and either a wall or a shutter bangs in response, right? Now, classification of a poltergeist, noisy spirit, people who bang, I don't think that's a poltergeist. I think that's just a spirit. If it is a spirit, let's say it's a spirit.
Yeah.
Let's rule out bad wind, circumstantial evidence, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think just because something moves in my house, it's then a poltergeist. Whereas the classification, things moving and stuff, poltergeist. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do, and I think a lot of it is over the years. I think we've now got to the point where I think people are looking at things more scientifically than sort of folklore. Years ago. the Victorian era was classic for seances and all that sort of thing. And we know that a lot of the things that happened at these seances were engineered. Obviously, there will have been some things that weren't. And you're talking about, opening portals or getting into contact with people who have died, if you believe that sort of thing. So I think there was a lot more folklore involved. I know when I was younger, I mean, I've got a significant birthday coming up this year, but when I was a little lad, and my granddad used to tell me ghost stories when we were sat, around the fire during the power cuts of the 1970s. But we used to sit around in front of the coal fire and the range that they had and candles around. And my granddad used to tell me ghost stories, and I was only 7, 8, 9 years of age. But he always used to tell me they were folklore stories, really, that just happen to involve unexplainable things, like ghosts, as they called them, or spirits, or whatever. And I also think a lot of it was due to religion as well. I think there was a lot of wanting there to be something after you pass on, and believing in ghosts being the entity of a dead person coming back. I think is reassuring in a way to people, because it then gives them something to hang on to, that when they pass on, there's something next along the line. But I think we're now becoming, the more people I talk to, the more people, as I say, are becoming, looking at things from a more logical point of view and possibly a more scientific point of view. And I certainly think there are more debunkers out there now than there used to be. And I think a lot of that is down to, I think a lot of people are their own worst enemy when it comes to the paranormal and entertainment, shall we say. Unfortunately, like everything else, when something comes along, people look for ways to exploit it and make money out of it. And unfortunately, I mean, like you just said there, you in however many years you've been investigating, you've only had a couple of instances where you've had something come back when you've asked for it. Now, if you watch, the TV programs on some obscure satellite channel on a Saturday night, where you've got people running around screaming and shouting, and every 30 seconds there's a bang or a knock or something's being thrown or whatever, typical entertainment purposes, I think people become more skeptical and become more happier to debunk things, because it gets to the point with those sort of things where it's actually ridiculous that this sort of activity is happening, at such a frequency. I've had arguments with people over the years about what was first coined to me by somebody, pay for paranormal. And I know there are a lot of people who enjoy going out and doing ghost hunts and everything else, but I do question the validity of a lot of these venues that possibly are haunted, but you're not going to get something all the time every day. I think people are looking at the paranormal now with slightly different eyes than they used to. Certainly over the last, since I've been interviewing people for my podcast, I've found that there are more skeptics, shall we say, I think, as well as believers, but there are more skeptics, I think, than there used to be.
Yes, because you think nowadays that we would have caught better evidence, but unfortunately it's such a muddy pot. Mm-hmm. It's no longer just telling each other stories, and half can be made up and half were real experiences. You can have video footage, and now obviously AI is going to just make it impossible.
Oh, that's something
dead, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about this actually, about what I'd like to chat with you about, because we've chatted about a lot of stuff, haven't we, over the last year or so, a couple of years. But certainly AI. I mean, it's every time you go. I mean, I'm ditching social media as much as I can. Every time I go onto a social media channel now, it's just there's AI. It's AI, and it is really, you can spot the bad AI, but it's quite difficult to spot, I think, the good AI now, and it's getting more and more complex. I've just seen the most ridiculous thing on TikTok now, just before I've started talking to you.
Oh, yeah.
About a purported transmission interruption across the whole of the world, where aliens have come on and said, you must not travel to the stars. You've travelled to the moon, and now with Artemis, and you can't do it anymore. We're telling you now to stop, stay on Earth.
Really?
And this is like God knows how many hundreds of thousands of views. And unfortunately, there are people out there that believe it. I mean, I remember as you probably do. Atlas, I Atlas 30 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
The amount of rubbish that was being, talked about this thing being an alien spacecraft and the Anunnaki coming back, whoever, all these all-powerful aliens are coming to Earth and all this. I mean, there are people who were genuinely frightened, and it's unfortunate. It's a shame. It's unfortunate, and I genuinely have sympathy for people who believe the stuff that they see on social media, especially when it's like that, because I mean, it can really affect, as we know, your mental health and your state of being and everything else. And they're just echo chambers to me. The algorithm gets hold of something that you've watched, and then it just pumps your feed full of the same algorithm all the time. And so again, with AI, you get bombarded with these AI videos that are either supposedly ghosts or spirits, or I've seen quite a lot of Bigfoot ones recently, and they're really badly done. And I've seen some UFO ones as well. I mean, there was one of a big triangular UFO that was hovering over this field somewhere in the Midwest of America, and it was, you look at it and I know it's AI, and I know it's an absolute load of rubbish, but there's going to be a percentage of people that look at that and they're going to get really worried, and really panic. And also for people who are genuine investigators and people who genuinely look at evidence of things like UFOs, for instance, it's going to muddy the waters for them so much, because it's going to get to the stage where you're not going to be able to tell the difference between something that's AI generated and something that's potentially real. So.
Yeah, I mean, there are kids, like when we were kids, seeing black and white pictures of ghosts and being blown away with it. But there are kids today, like you say, they're not looking for paranormal. They've probably never even dipped the toe in. And the first thing they see is this craft was seen over a field. And they're like, what? Aliens are real? And that's their first, well, it looks damn real, And the thought is, imagine it though, if that terrifies you, it is frightening. Like, I don't know if you remember the rapture thing recently, where that was terrifying.
The end of the world is happening within the next 24 hours.
They waited.
The rapture was supposed to happen. I gave my house away. I gave away my savings.
That was linked to the Three Eye Atlas thing, wasn't it?
That was it. I said yes. I don't know. Was it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, well, there were some people that were saying that the Three Eye Atlas was a
sign,
a prelude to the rapture, and it was supposed to happen on a certain date. Was it certain date in November or something last year, or something like that? I mean, you can imagine people being taken in by it, and either genuinely really looking forward to it because their beliefs are aligned with it, or being absolutely scared to death. I mean, I've seen a lot of stuff recently on TikTok about nuclear war, and again, with things that are going on in the world at the minute, it is frightening. It is extremely worrying, and I can understand how it can affect people's mental health. I mean, I've got a 19-year-old son, and I'm quite lucky in the fact that he's very level-headed, and he doesn't fall for this sort of stuff, and he's even more of a skeptic about social media than I am.
I know my son's he catches AI easier than I do. I'll show him a news story or a picture, trying to, because he's skeptical. And I'm like, look at this. What do you make of that? And he's like that AI Atlas, for example. I'm like, well, that's brilliant. That's a news story, isn't it? And he goes, never heard of it. I'm like, everyone's talking about it. Everyone's talking. And it turned out everyone on my feed was talking about it.
Well, it's an echo chamber, isn't it? You see, it's the algorithm that, just pushes the same thing to you all the time. And so you think everybody else is seeing the same thing, but it isn't. But just going back to why you asked me about AI, I mean, we're going to end up, UFOs obviously are the big thing where, there's pictures of purported UFOs. But, there's going to be a lot of supposed pictures of ghosts and poltergeist activity and all sorts of stuff that can just literally be created within, a couple of minutes. And it just really muddies reality. And I'm genuinely worried about AI, I must admit, not just in this in this context, but in general.
But on the other end, we've got like people filming their rooms and saying, "What are all these orbs? You know, I've got orbs in my room," and it's just like I can't win. AI's at one end, and not knowing what you're talking about's at the other.
Yeah, dust.
And it's like, well, it's just done.
Yeah.
There's just no proving the paranormal anymore.
It's just for clicks, isn't it? And I think that's the problem. It's just for clicks, and it's just for views.
Yeah. So you mentioned stone tape theory. You know, a theory that was born out of the movie The Stone Tape.
Yeah.
And why do we have a theory based? Why don't we base it on the magic of the Avengers Assemble movie? If we're just going to base our theory on a film, it seems like totally a wrong place to start.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it was probably I've not seen the film, I must admit. I mean, it was probably an idea, or that, you know, something that perhaps somebody had experienced and thought that was the reason behind it, and that's why it stuck. I mean, again, it's like any sort of theory or trend, isn't it? In the old days before social media, it was film or TV programs that used to start these sort of trends off, and now of course it's social media. I do think there's some mileage in the theory that if there's a traumatic experience, at the end of the day, we're all made of energy. Everything around us is made of energy. It's just a different construct of energy that makes things different to others. And when we die, I mean, you know, as I get older, I get more, I won't say fascinated because it's a bit morbid, but I think more about, is there anything after this? What happens when I go? What happens when I die? I've lost both my parents, and I've been there when they've passed away, and it's something that I think that obviously the energy has to go somewhere. It's basically what I'm saying. So the energy needs to go somewhere. Now, whether it goes back to this, back into space, back into the stars, where we obviously, originally came from. We all come from the stars. But if there's something traumatic happens and somebody dies in a traumatic way, then I do see there is a possibility that energy can be trapped in somewhere, and it can become very anchored in a place or a building. Doesn't necessarily have to be a building. It can be in a place. It can be on a road somewhere. If somebody's, passed away in a sudden car accident or something, that energy could still be stuck in that place, and it's because the energy hasn't had that opportunity to move on because it's happened so quickly and so traumatically. And there's been such an amount of energy, probably a spike in some sort of energy because of what's happened. I do think there is some mileage in the stone tape theory. I mean, one of the stories in the first book, the Shadow Man book, is a school that I went to visit, and I was taken on a bit of a tour, and I did a recording of it when I was being taken around by one of the maintenance guys that worked there, and they'd experienced a lot of stuff, a lot of very strange stuff. But one of them was it was a recurring sighting that was seen broad daylight, and it was seen by dozens and dozens and dozens of people, time and time again, not once, not twice, but dozens of times. And it was a woman, looked like a woman. She was dressed in old-fashioned clothing. He said he thought it looked Victorian, and that's an interesting point, which I'll get to in a minute, actually, about why we see a lot of Victorian spirits. But it followed the same path. It came through the same part of a particular wall. It crossed over the same part of a certain room and then disappeared on the other side through the same part of another wall. And every time it was seen, it followed exactly the same route. Now, to me, something like that it's an energy which is trapped in that area, and it's replaying itself time and time again, almost as if it's trying to free itself from where it is. It's trying to break that anchor. And in this particular case, it was fairly well established that the school was built on the site of an old church which had been demolished, and the graveyard a lot of bodies had been exhumed and moved. It was quite a big thing at the time when it happened, and it was in all the local papers about people not being happy about the graveyard being built on and the bodies being exhumed. And this particular figure was obviously in a state of distress, and it would seem that it was possibly a woman who was mourning the loss of somebody, and her energy at that time had somehow got itself anchored to this particular place. When the school was built on top of where this church was, the energy was still there, and it was still replaying itself. Somebody once said to me, well, why don't we see ghosts of dinosaurs? If we're going to see ghosts, why don't we see cavemen? Why don't we see dinosaurs? Why don't we see loads of Roman soldiers? Well, we do. We see Roman soldiers, so we don't tend to see much going any further back than that. And I think with these types of stone theory replays, I think as time goes on, the energy becomes less and less. So the older the original incident was, the weaker it is as time goes on, and eventually it just gets to the point where we don't notice it anymore. So there may well be ghosts of T-Rex and Brontosaurus and all sorts of stuff running around out there that we just don't see because the energy now is so weak, because over time it's depleted that we just don't see it. So obviously, people from last century or the century before, the Victorian age, is quite recent historically. If somebody's become anchored in this particular way, they've still got a lot of energy, which is replaying, which is why we see a lot of sort of Victorian ghosts or Edwardian ghosts or ghosts from, maybe the Second World War or things like that. So that's one of the theories that I've had, that there's a reason why we see more recent ghosts more than we see historical ghosts.
Yeah, I like that explanation. I mean, although we don't have the scientific laws of the paranormal yet, we do have the laws that we know, and entropy, being that everything, turns to chaos and decays, that goes along with what you're saying. Cavemen, they're too old, the energies become something else, like ashes to the wind, But the stone tape theory bothers me because tape has a mechanism for holding and recording, magnetism and stuff. Stone doesn't. If stone had a capability of holding energy, it would have all the heat that had ever been in a room. Your house would be absolutely lava hot from all the Christmases you've had your heating on. Do you know what I mean?
I do. And it's that is a fair point. What I wonder about is, there are things like ley lines, for instance, that again, scientifically you can't prove that there is energy on these lines, but things happen, especially where these lines cross. The country is crisscrossed by ley lines. There are intersections, some quite major intersections around here. There's one actually which intersects right across Pendle Hill. If you believe that these ley lines exist, now that they are some sort of energy. There is some sort of energy involved. And I think it was Jenny Randalls who postulated that UFOs, for instance, are attracted by geology, so by geological factors, where you have different types of geology. And I am no geologist. I've said this many a time. Yeah. My geography is bends in rivers, and that's about it. But Pendle Hill, for instance, the reason why it is what it is because it's one particular type of stone. It's limestone and something called millstone grit. The reason I know this is because my wife is a teacher, and she's a humanities teacher as well as an English teacher, so she does a little bit of geography, and she's told me about the different types of geology in this area, and it's basically sat on limestone. Now, we don't know whether there is interaction at a geological level, at some level, that is giving off some sort of energy, or maybe holding on to some sort of energy. Now, I fully agree with what you're saying. If a stone was like a videotape, for instance, where something was physically recorded onto it, then you would expect things to be physically being recorded onto everything around you. But I think is it possible that it's only certain types of energy and it's only certain types of geology that hold this energy, and it's just something that we don't yet understand and we don't have an explanation for?
Sure, it's always an option. Do you know the origin of ley lines?
I don't. I did a little bit of research into the ley lines in this particular area when I was writing the second book, because I do talk about ley lines a little bit. I know that some of them, for instance, are supposed to follow. Now, again, this is a bit of a nice coincidence that they purportedly follow Roman roads, for instance. But people who are a lot more have a lot more knowledge of these things than me from over the years have put together quite a lot of evidence that does seem to be quite convincing to me that there are particular places where these lines allegedly intersect, where there seems to be more paranormal and more UFO activity than other places. So, who came up with the idea of ley lines? I don't know. I mean,
it was Alfred Watkins.
Right. Okay.
In 1921.
Right.
He wrote a book called The Old Straight Track, and he didn't think they were mystical. He just said that ancient people, this was their quickest route between main settlements. They connected like landmarks, but like going over Pendle Hill because it was the quickest way to get to the village at the other side. And you could spot like hill here, and then a church there seems to be the obvious thing to walk towards. So there's nothing, there's nothing until we put energies and mysticism on them. It's just like that's the obvious place to walk. And they're crisscrossing the land because in the olden days, you just like, well, it's over that way. If I head towards that chapel.
Well, there is a Bronze Age burial site right on the top of Pendle.
I'm just saying that I believe in energies and ghosts and spirits can keep replaying, but then there's a ley line gives off energy. Well, no, not a ley line. If loads of people walked that, humans have got energy.
Yeah.
I don't know where it's kept because I don't really get stone tape theory, but it's just like we just keep spieling out this same old stuff. And when you look into what that stuff is, all the physics is like, well, no, it can't. Nobody thought that was what it was originally.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
I do.
It's old folklore, isn't it?
It is. A lot of it's old folklore. A lot of it, I have got no doubt, goes back to the times of the Druids. You're right about shortest distance between 2 points. There is allegedly one goes from Castlerig, Stone Circle up in Cumbria, down to Stonehenge, and passes through Stonehenge.
That's a cool, interesting place.
Goes somewhere else, and there's also one which crosses at the top of Pendle, which I think I find interesting. Somebody somewhere has obviously got a map out and drawn 2 lines, if that's what you believe. But that goes from west to east, and that when that crosses the east coast, it's at Whitby. Right. So now, obviously, on the East Coast, we know there's strange things goes on. Again, name dropping. Paul Sinclair, who you know.
I don't know. I only know through you, actually, Craig.
Right. Okay. Well, I did an interview with him about 2 or 3 weeks ago about what's been going on up there. And again, it's the same with any investigator. You either take what they tell you on face value, or you question it. I always question stuff. I might not necessarily do it when I'm chatting to somebody and recording it, but because at the end of the day, they're the guest and I want them to speak. Yeah. But sometimes when I finish and I stop recording, I'll run back through it in my own mind and I'll think to myself, well, that's a bit bullshit, really.
Yeah.
But interestingly, Paul's done a lot of stuff up there. There is definitely something in that area which is a bit odd. There's no two ways about it, because there's been so many sightings by other people as well. But I just found it interesting that ley line or that line on a map, if that's what you want to call it, crosses the summit of Pendle with one that's going north to south, and when it goes out into the North Sea over on the east side of the country, it happens to be in an area where there's been multiple UFO sightings, multiple big cat sightings. Yeah. Multiple carcass discoveries of obviously something large and powerful that's killed a deer or killed a sheep or dragged it up into a tree, and that sort of thing. So I do find it interesting. I don't doubt that there were paths that were walked for millennia by our ancestors. Was there a reason why they chose those paths? Was it simply just that it was the shortest route between A and B? Or was A and B created after and put at each end of the path that they were walking for whatever reason?
Yeah, some other reason that we've maybe lost touch with because the spirituality's
possibly,
gone.
Yeah. But I mean, stone circles is a fascinating story in itself, and the reason why why they were built and so on. Everybody thinks about Stonehenge, but there are others that I think are equally as interesting. And I, I do believe that there was some sort of mechanism for tracking the stars, or for telling the time, or just gathering places for people to, have the midwinter feasts, or to midwinter especially, to bring on the spring, to bring the gods, to keep the gods happy that they believed in, so that the year would turn and they go back into spring, and the hard time of winter would be past and everything else. And so I think it's probably a combination of lots and lots of different reasons. I mean, I keep saying to myself, I really must go and visit Castlereagh, because it's not that far away, really, in the great scheme of things. It's only a couple of hours drive. But I have been to Stonehenge, and there is, whether you feel it because you want to feel it, or whether you feel it because there is something there, open for discussion. It's like when you go to to an old building, or like an old stately home or something like that, and you go in and you get that sort of prickle, and you think, well, is it something that's here that I'm picking up on, or is it just that it's what I want to feel? I went to Salisbury Hall once, first time I ever went in, and I was really excited. I was convinced I was going to see the White Lady, and I came out of there absolutely convinced that the place was haunted. But is that because I wanted it to be haunted, or is that because I was subconsciously aware of something that was there? Who knows? And again, I think stone circles are very much like that. But there's definitely a mysticism, and there's definitely an attachment to the past, which I think is important that we keep as alive as we possibly can, because they are, very mystical places.
Yeah, things like Stonehenge, and there are circles I've been to up in Yorkshire, and when you get there, it's just such a strange feeling to be physically linked to someone from the past who came here, and it was a big event.
Yeah.
And it's in a strange shape, a circle of standing stones is kind of gravestone-y. But yeah, there's something palpable about the link between old generations and yourself. Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
There's no, I am totally on board with that. I'm going to see if we can watch this YouTube without everything crashing at the end of our chat. Let me put this up. This is meant to be, I searched the best ghost evidence. This is less than a minute. So this is the best ghost evidence. Let's see if we can make it work.
I don't see nothing down there. Can't be the motorcycles, honey. There's another spot.
What is that?
Tree.
No, you moved it, right? Right there, see it?
Uh-huh.
So what do you think of that?
A lot of rubbish.
Exactly. If that's where we're at, well...
Yeah, if that's the best we can do. I mean, obviously the quality was pretty bad, and there was sort of movement on the left. There was also movement a little bit up on the right-hand side as well. And again, I mean, I can see how somebody can look at that and think it's a figure. I mean, it may well have been a figure, but we don't know that it's not just somebody with a sheet over the top of them in a very grainy, very bad quality video, and it's just a setup. It's just been staged. I mean, we just don't know, do we?
It's just so difficult.
But again, I mean, it's all down to, you can put any old rubbish on social media, and if you have the right tag, you have the right tagline or the right thumbnail, and it takes off, and all of a sudden everybody's like, oh my god, it's the most amazing ghost video you'll ever see in your life, you must see this. Ultimately, it just turns out to be an utter disappointment.
What it really should be called is, we don't know what this was.
Yeah, and we can't prove that we didn't set it up.
Yeah, right, Greg. This is the footage.
Well, there's nothing else for context, so it could be. It looks like a cylinder, looks like a steel metallic maybe cylinder. There's nothing in the background for context, for perspective, so it could just be something that's being recorded very close up against a clear blue sky. There could be somebody stood behind the camera with a flashlight that's making the light reflect off it like it was. To me, it proves absolutely nothing, and yet I noticed that it had over 200 million views.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, it just goes to prove that if you put a title that says best ever video footage of a UFO, people are going to click on it.
What did you make of the New Jersey spate of drones or weird things over English bases and that period about a year ago?
I just think they were organised drones. I don't think they were anything extraterrestrial or interdimensional. I think the problem that again we have now is that there are so many drones. They're quite cheap to buy, aren't they? And you can just fly them off anywhere. I mean, if you get caught, especially in this country, anywhere near airports or whatever, you're buggered. But there's nothing to stop you from initially doing it. And if you get half a dozen of your mates together and you get half a dozen drones together and you set them all off in the same direction, I suppose it can look like a swarm of UFOs. I'm not convinced at all about things like that and the ones over in America. I don't really know enough about. I didn't see enough footage, to be honest. But again, I suspect it was something that was from here. Somebody had just got together with the mates and sent a load of drones up. It was organised. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yeah. So did you watch the disclosure thing in Congress where the people from like Area 51 were saying that what they'd got?
Bits of it.
I mean, these are reputable people, supposedly saying we have got alien bodies.
Well, yeah. I mean, Brian Cox came out with a good one. I watched a video with Brian Cox and somebody said, what do you think is at Area 51? And he said sand. So, I mean, it's going back to I-31 Atlas or whatever it was called. You had these big names in the UFO community like Avi Loeb, for instance, who was putting videos out saying it's an alien craft.
Was he a UFO guy? I know he was
Avi Loeb.
Space.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've heard him being interviewed about UFOs before. He's supposedly some sort of scientist, isn't he? But he talks a lot about UFOs. He used to be on Howard Hughes's
did he?
radio show quite a lot. He used to have him on whenever there was anything UFO-y going on. So yeah, I mean, when you have people like that who are coming out with all these theories that have got absolutely no basis in fact at all, disclosure to me is it's always tomorrow. We'll tell you tomorrow. You'll get to find out tomorrow. There's a saying that my grandma used to say, an old Lancashire saying, and it's jam tomorrow. There's always jam tomorrow. So there's always something better tomorrow. You're always going to get what you want tomorrow. And with disclosure, you're always going to find out tomorrow. And they have these congressional hearings, and they go around in circles. There's nothing tangible. There's nothing concrete. There's no evidence. It's all subject. Yeah, what's the word I'm looking for? Subjective.
Yeah.
There's no evidence. They're saying yes, we have alien bodies at Area 51. Well, then where's the evidence? Because you've been going on about this now for 70 years. So where's the evidence? Okay, you've got people who say, well, they've reverse engineered the craft and everything else. Okay, so where's the evidence? What have you reverse engineered? And if we did have downed craft, and I've spoken to quite a lot of people about different incidents that have happened all over the world, you'd think that somebody somewhere it doesn't, because it's always America. It's always in America. We always have downcraft in America. There's supposedly downcraft in Russia. There's supposedly downcraft in China. So why have they not come out and said, well, no, actually, here's footage. This is what we've got. But they never do. So to me, if there have been downcraft that have been recovered and are stored in places like Area 51 and, equivalent facilities in other countries, there is some higher authority than a national government which is keeping a lid on it. It's not, because these other countries are not doing their own disclosure. Nobody's doing disclosure, despite the fact that there's supposedly all these different craft that have come down all over the place. The British government apparently has one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently, yeah. And it's linked to Rendlesham. So I've been told, but who knows?
Yeah.
So again,
Why ain't there a space race version of we want to be the first country to say, we have this, look, da-da, and go down in history as the person to say, this country had it first?
Yeah, exactly. Because, in my opinion, there is something which is above national governments, which is keeping a lid on this. And I know it sounds like a conspiracy theory, but let's be honest, I don't want to get too political, but talking about America and disclosure, we have a president at the minute who will do anything to say, look the other way, look over there, don't look over here, look over there. And he's been going on, we're finally going to come out with disclosure, and then something else happens, look over there, don't look over here. And you'd think that if anybody in history was going to authorize the release of the files which prove irrefutably that there were crafts that crashed and have been recovered, you'd think it will be the current president.
Yeah, I agree.
And he hasn't.
No.
And he's mentioned it a few times, but then he's not done anything about it. Now, there's two reasons for that, to my mind. It's either he's been told to shut his mouth, or nothing exists.
Yeah.
And I think it's the former. I really do. I think that governments are being told what they can and cannot release. I think there's a higher power. I'm not saying that is extraterrestrial at all, but I think it's military, and I think it could almost be religious. It could almost be something like the Vatican that is so powerful that it's putting a lid on this. Because if we found out that the aliens were real, then it would mean an entire rethink of our social structure.
Yeah, no religions anymore.
And religion would be part of that. And I think there's a lot of stuff. I've got Mark Holly coming on my podcast next week, and we're talking about the Bible, and we're going to talk about the devil, basically. And I think there's a lot of stuff in the Bible, and I think there's a lot of stuff in religion, and I think there's a lot of stuff that the Vatican knows about, which is way above some countries' governments. And I think that's got a lot to do with the lack of disclosure. I think they get to a certain point, and then somebody somewhere says, no, you can't do that. No, you've got to back up.
Yeah. Well, thanks for that. That was a good chat. Where can we get your books? Where can we find you?
Okay, so I'm all over the place, unfortunately, annoyingly. You can find my books on Amazon. If you just put Craig Bryant in, you will get some strange looking books that are not me. Pee-wee the Horse by somebody called Bryant Craig over in America is not me. But yeah, you'll see both the books on there if you put Craig Bryant in. I do actually have an All My Links page. So if you go onto All My Links and then just go /Paranormal Pendle, that'll bring all the links up. So the links to my both my books on Amazon, and also the YouTube channel, and my social media, Facebook and everything else is on there. Email address if you want to get in contact with me, if you want to send me any stories, which people do, which is great. I always enjoy reading other people's stories. So yeah, basically just go onto All My Links. Look for Paranormal Pendle. Find me on there. I'm on Facebook. I'm on TikTok, YouTube.
Awesome. Yes, loving your work as always, and we'll speak again, I'm sure. So thanks for coming on.
Thank you for having me on. It's been a pleasure.